I mean, it's a Rorschach test. I don't know how else to say it. It's a Rorschach test. You're looking at chicken scratch and you're saying, what do you see? And you're saying, I see this. What on earth is going on here? But how you get, again, how you get this from this is, well, I know how you do it. You have to really, really want it. You have to say, I really, really need this stone to match the supposed inscription we found at this other place. What is this? Touching there's a letter here? Really? And if you look at what Professor Galil is doing with this inscription, you can see this. The letters that he's suggesting aren't there. And I think you would be hard-pressed to find any legitimate scholar, any credible archaeologist, to look at that stone and to say, yes, Professor Galil has accurately represented what is on that stone, if there's any inscription there at all. It's just not there. Hey, welcome back. I'm Dr. Bob Cargill, the excavator. And today I want to do a little bit different video. It's something that I used to do, years ago, involving Photoshop. And what we want to do is look at a recent claim made by Professor Gershon Galil about an inscription he claims to have discovered in Jerusalem. This would be a Jerusalem inscription in stone that he believes to be a curse inscription. And I want to do this as objectively as possible. So he claims, Professor Galil does, that he's deciphered or discovered an inscription from a stone that was discovered a while back. And in this inscription, it just coincidentally says something almost identical to the recent so-called discovery of an inscription at Mount Ebal, right? A little tiny lead tablet that Scott Stripling calls a defixio. We still haven't seen this thing, by the way, but they're telling us what it says. And Professor Galil has made a drawing of a portion of it. Again, we haven't seen this. They say they've written an article. They say that it's being submitted for peer review, although I don't know what reputable peer review journal is going to publish an unprovenanced inscription of this sort. But Dr. Galil has turned around and said that he's discovered some more of inscriptions like this. And what I want to suggest is that, I hate to say this, but I suggested it very gently at the end of my last video on Mount Ebal, but I think it just needs to be said now. What we're dealing with here is essentially Trump-style politics applied to biblical archaeology, right? And, the Mount Ebal inscription is Trump's taxes, essentially. I'm going to show it to you, we're going to show it to you, and then they never show it to you. And then when they don't show it to us, it's going to be, well, the liberal scholars and skeptics, they wouldn't let us publish it, so they'll publish it in Bible and Spade, or they'll publish it somewhere else. Again, I can't think of a reputable peer-reviewed journal that's going to publish this inscription, but what I mean by when I say Trump-style politics applied to biblical archaeology, here's what I mean. You make a claim, a completely unsubstantiated claim, that they themselves claim is going to undo biblical scholarship and archaeology for the past 100 years, right? It's going to undo the documentary hypothesis. It's going to undo what we know about, right? I mean, it's just going to upend everything. But we're not going to show it to you. We're not going to show it to you. But trust me, this is what it does. And they're going to have a world tour, and they're going to give lectures, and they're going to... to their own audience. Of course, they're going to have press releases and they're going to do all kinds of stuff and make these claims, but they're not going to actually show you the evidence. They'll make drawings of it, and I'll show you why this is important in a minute. They're going to make drawings of it, but they won't actually show you the inscription. By the way, you can't see the Mount Ebal inscription. They're using a computer to read the inside of this. And what I suggested, again, in my last video, is that what they're reading is a deteriorating lead tablet. And who knows, there might be something inscribed in there. If it is a piece of lead folded in half, there's a good chance that something's inscribed in there. But what I'm suggesting is that what they're reading in there might be a couple of letters, maybe something inscribed, but they're adding to that the deteriorating lead tablet. And they're reading it in such a way that they're making up letters, right? This proto-alphabetic script. So when you make up a script, you can make up shapes, you can make up letters that can go in any direction, that can be couched inside of each other. They're making up their own script. They're making up their own rules so that they can make this thing say what they want it to say. Then they're going to present that to the world, and then they're just going to double down on it and double down on it. And when all of the other scholars, the reputable scholars, the credible scholars teaching at all of the universities across the country say, show this to us so that we can look at this, right? Well, we'll be kind. We'll play the wait and see, right? We'll say all the nice diplomatic things that you say when somebody makes some kind of outrageous claim like this. But then they don't show it to you, and you say, we'd really like to see this, right? And they can't show it to you, right? So what do? Well, the Trump-style politics would be like, you manufacture some other claim, some other evidence. And I think that's what's going on now, for a stone that was apparently discovered a long time ago. This thing was discovered back in 2010 by Professor Shukron. So it's been around for a while, right? But only now is it being not only interpreted, but the interpretation that's being offered by Professor Galil is remarkably similar, like almost identical, to the inscription, the supposed inscription that we're supposed to believe is there with the Mount Ebal lead tablet, with the similar shapes of letters, yada, 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 right? And so what do you do when hey, let us see this Mount Ebal tablet. Let us see this Mount Ebal tablet. Well, we're not going to show you that yet. We're waiting for peer review. But hey, check out this thing we discovered. It has almost an identical inscription, and it's here in Jerusalem. So what do? Again, no self-respecting peer-reviewed journal is going to publish what I'm about to show you. So what I thought I'd do is, since this is a visual exercise, I thought I'd do what I've done for a lot of my career, and that is use Photoshop. And I'm going to use Photoshop in a specific way. What I'm going to do, and this is my methodology, so I'm just explaining my methodology, is Dr. Galil put forth a photograph of this stone, okay, with all of what he claims is the inscription in it. And then he put forth a drawing of what he says are all of the letters that make up this inscription that is remarkably similar, right? Coincidentally, remarkably similar to the supposed Mount Ebal inscription. So what I thought I'd do to test this theory is to don't look at Professor Galil's drawing. I don't want to cognitively prime my brain. That is, I don't want to see what he sees. I want to just look at the stone. And then what I thought I'd do here with you live using the computer is to take Photoshop, make a layer, and then just start outlining the lines. And what we'll do together is every time we see a scratch that looks like it was a chisel mark, an inscribed mark, whether it was they were trying to chisel away the face just to make, they were carving out the stone, I don't know, to fit another stone, or maybe they were preparing the stone to make an inscription. We don't know. But we won't distinguish between chiseled marks, scratches, let's call them, that were made as part of the chiseling process or that were actual letters that were inscribed, right? We're just going to mark lines that we see, right? If we see any curves, we'll mark those as well. The other thing that we'll mark are holes, pock marks in the stone. We'll mark those, as well as the approaches to those holes. And what I mean by the approaches to those holes are, if you drive a nail straight into a piece of wood or to a stone, you're just going to see the hole. But any of you who've ever drilled a nail into a piece of wood on an angle, right, you'll see that there's an area of the wood, especially if you take the nail back out, there's an area of the wood that kind of gets carved on the way into where the nail's actually going in. And the same is true with stone. So when if a nail goes into a piece of stone on an angle, part of the stone approaching the actual place where it's driving down into gets chipped away. And so we'll highlight those areas. And then what we'll do is highlight depressions in the rock. Again, this is stone, and there's going to be a natural contour to the stone. It's not going to be sanded down in perfectly smooth face. It's not marble that's been processed, right? Somebody was chiseling this away, and there's a natural contour to the face of the stone. And we'll mark those. And we'll try to distinguish between natural contours to the stone and maybe what was chipped away, or, a flake of the stone, something like that. And we'll do that first, right? What we'll do is we'll look at just the picture of the stone that Professor Galil provided, and we'll go through in Photoshop and we'll mark those, and we'll be honest about those. We'll try to be very generous about them. Okay, we'll mark those in Photoshop. Now, you're going to watch this part and you're going to be like, oh, this is boring. And you might do that. You might want to fast forward to that part. But that's what we'll do. Then what we'll do is we'll call up Professor Galil's drawing, and we'll see if we missed anything, if he saw something that we didn't, or if he is seeing things that he, let's say, wants to see. I won't say that he's seeing things that aren't there, but that he's seeing things that he really wants to be there, that there's little or no evidence for in the actual stone. And so that's the process. We want to start objectively with just marking out the stone as we see it, and I'll be as generous as I possibly can. And then we'll look at Professor Galil's drawing and compare that side by side to the drawing that we made, and then we'll see what I've been claiming, if what I've been claiming is true. We'll see if this is what I've been calling a fundamentalist Rorschach test. Basically, it's eisegesis in a textual, right? They're reading into the text. They really want this to say something. Or if it's an accurate portrayal, an accurate interpretation of what the stone actually says. Right? Got it? So that's the methodology that we're going to do, and I'll call this up here on the computer, and we'll use Photoshop to take a peek at this. Got it? All right, so what we're going to do is come up here and open up, go to Image Open, and then we're going to open up the stone photograph that Dr. Galil gave to the press. So this is a photograph of what was submitted to the press. And what we'll do is we'll go up here to Image, and we'll change the size. We'll basically bring it up to like 1500 pixels. This doesn't really strain the pixelation here too much, but it keeps me from having to double the size. We're actually working with a document that's a little bit bigger. We'll bring it up here a little bit. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can go up here to Image. You can't see my menu here, but you can go over here to Adjustments and to Levels. And then within the levels, on the default, you can actually start noodling a little bit here with these just to see if you can raise the contrast. And as you can see, as you change these levels of lighting here, you can actually bring out some of the contrast. It looks a little stronger. You can bring out the mid-range. See, if you come out here, you get just the scratches on top, but if you get in here, you can get a little deeper mid-range. And then down in here, you start to lose some of the deeper stuff. Maybe we leave it in here a little bit. What I'm saying is you can alter these angles, these colors, to try to get us as many lines as we possibly can. So what we're going to do is come over here and we're going to go to Layer, and we're going to create a new layer. And this will just be our sketch layer. And that layer will sit, as you can see, on top over here. It will, you can see there's a layer down here, layer 1. This is the bottom right corner, and then there's sketch layer. Layer sits on top, and then what we'll do is we'll go over here and we'll get our, let's say, a paintbrush tool. Let's get a pencil tool. So now we'll have our pencil tool. Our pencil tool, how thick is it going to be? A little thinner than that. Let's undo that. Let's make our ink, let's make our pencil size maybe 7. And then let's make the color of this pencil black for now. Let's just do it in black so that we can have a black sketch. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is outline our image here. So I'm going to start here in the upper left-hand corner, and I'm just going to, now this isn't going to be absolutely perfect because I'm on a trackball here, but you can see here I'm just kind of outlining now notice that I'm doing this while I'm on the, layer, the sketch layer, right? So I'm just outlining so we have kind of a basic outline of the stone. I may fast forward this when we get to the video just so you don't have to sit here and watch me outline. Okay, so it's not exactly perfect. I cut a couple of edges here, but fortunately, in those places, there's not said to be any inscriptions. So there we go. We'll be more careful with the actual inscription. But there is our outline. I'm going to blow this up. I'm going to hit Command plus and just blow this up a little bit so we can see a little closer. I'll move it to the center here on the screen. And now what we want to do, again, we're on the sketch layer over here, is I want to start drawing out these lines. Now, again, the purpose of this exercise, and it's just a rough exercise, but it's to demonstrate cognitive priming, right? It's to demonstrate what you see in the actual stone versus what Dr. Galil is saying that he sees, and then we compare those. So without looking at his picture, again, I don't have his image anywhere on my desk. I don't have his image anywhere, on any screen. I'm just wanting to go through and start outlining these pictures. So we'll start down here. There's a ridge here. Now again, this is the problem. You can see this line coming across right here, right? Do we see this line? Now, is that a cut or is that a deliberate inscription, right? You can see it. It looks like it goes all the way, whoops, it looks like it goes all the way across right here, right? It looks like the rock is just chiseled, right? It looks like they were trying to carve something out, and that's the bottom of the chisel, right? You can see it here. They're coming down and they're chiseling it out. So are those lines part of the inscription? I would say no. What this is, let's give it a different color here. Let's make it red, let's say. This is kind of the outline of the inscription. If they were trying to make, if this is an inscription, let's make it a little curved here, of the inscription they were trying to make. Okay, so they were coming down here. And then somewhere, it looks like they did it twice here, right? They did this, and they missed, and then they chiseled it out here, and then they chiseled it out here, and then they chiseled it out here, and then they chiseled. You can see 3 chisel marks. One there, one there, one there. But essentially, maybe there's a light one here, and there's a light one here. But essentially, they're trying to chisel out. You can see one here, right? Let's not cover up these holes, because these holes are important to Dr. Galil, right? But you can see it here, and you can see it here. Now, let's go back over. Let's change a different color. Let's give a color blue. Okay, let's make it blue. Dr. Galil says these holes are important. So we're going to color in these holes right now while we got them. That's the hole, and then this is the pockmark for the hole, right? This is the deep hole. And you notice there's this long pockmark for this hole. Do you notice that? It's like they were chiseling down in to the hole, right? Again, here's the hole. You see the hole down in here? But then there's this long pockmark. So the idea is that whatever was making this hole was drilled in this way, because it's creating this pockmark into the hole. And whatever was creating this one was drilled in this way, right? Because it's creating this long, anybody who's worked in stone or wood, when you put a nail into something, this one here doesn't have that long approach, so it was probably put straight in. Look at this one down here. Here's your hole, right? But here's this long approach that gets shallower and shallower as we go up. You can see it here. So this one was probably put in this way, right? You can see it. And then there's one more hole up here, and we don't know which way this nail came in from, because you can see this, it was chipped away, right? So maybe it was coming down this direction, right? Or maybe it was coming in from this direction. But for whatever reason, the hole is here, but this whole region here is chipped away. And then you've got this hole kind of outside out here. And again, same thing. Because so much of this region is chipped away, we don't know if the hole came in this direction. We don't know if it came in this direction. So we'll just leave this as a hole like that. Now, did I get all of the holes? There's a couple, tiny little things over here, and we'll do this hole right here. Now, again, this one went relatively straight in, but you can see it definitely came up from this way, because you can see the shallow apron down here, right? And then coming in. Whoops. Right? So we'll do this apron down here, but again, you can see kind of the approach of the direction of the nails. All right, any other? And there's a little one over here. I guess we can do like that. There's a little hole up here. Okay, that's enough of the holes. Okay, let's get back to the red. Red all the way down here at the bottom. No, not red. We want to do black. We'll put it on red, and then we'll swap it up with the black here. Okay, good. So now let's go through and do the scratches. And again, the problem with these inscriptions is always, is it a deliberate inscribed mark, or is it a chisel mark from when they were trying to chisel out the thing, or is it a fracture in the stone? What is it? But anyways, let's just mark them all. So here, there's clearly something. This looks like a cross, right? So there's something here, and there's something here, okay? There's something here. It may have been a deep chisel with the red, but we don't know. This looks like something here. There's down, over, and down. And whoops, I kind of got out of the line there, so let's make sure we represent it accurately. Good. We'll go ahead and mark this one. Does it continue down here? We don't know, but there's a tiny little tick right here. This is a long, this is a long mark here. There appears to be a mark here. There's some kind of depression that comes all the way up just beside this thing. Well, I kind of got outside of it. I want to do this as fairly and accurately as I can. There's clearly a little mark there. Again, I'm not trying to make any judgment call, between what I think is a chisel mark and what I think is a deliberately inscribed letter. Again, I put that should be straighter. I could use the line tool, but we'll just do this for now. Here is something. We have up, and then we have this, and then we have, and again, I may fast forward through some of this. Maybe you could, here's something, right? There, which continues up. You can see it continuing, whoops, too high. You can see it continuing up to this pockmark. It continues up. So is this a fissure in the stone, right? You see what I'm saying? How it just kind of continues up here, and then it kind of goes up in, and it... So does that continue all the way up here like this, right? Is that just a line in the stone? Do you see it? Or is that an inscribed mark? Some of these are clearly inscribed marks, either from a chisel, just as they're chiseling away the stone, or they're, deliberately inscribed letters. Someone was actually making an inscription. Same up here. Is that just a flaking of the rock? Or is that somebody trying to carve something? I think that's something that chipped away when they were putting in this nail or whatever made that, hole. Same here. Is that an inscribed area? Okay, let's mark it. Let's mark it. You know what? Let's pick a different color for these ones that we're not sure about. Let's pick like an orange, like a deep orange. Yeah, that's a random enough color. That way we're distinguishing these as, let's do this also. Let's change the opacity on them to like 50%. There we go. So we're marking these as kind of, we're not sure if they're changes in surface in the stone, right? Or if they're actual inscribed marks. Can we be honest about that? Like this down here. Is that an inscribed mark, or is that just, is this a shadow changing of the surface of it? We don't know. Right? This just looks like the natural surface of the stone that hasn't been sanded off, or like this up here, right? I think this is the chipping of you can see the trough is, all the way over here, right? I think it goes with that pockmark, but who knows? We'll just be fair. We'll just, let's go back over to black. We can come over here and see that there's something here. Right? So, again, I think it's important to do this in real time so that you can see the method. You can see the process. Okay, let's call this one an inscribed mark. And then let's go over here to the brown at 50%. And then let's say that this here is part of this curvature of the stone. Let's say that, this is clearly part of the surface of the stone, right? I mean, you can see that somebody chipped down in there, right? They're trying to clear out this stone. That's a surface of the stone thing. What is this? Is this right here, right? Is that just the changing surface of the stone, or do we mark that as an inscribed mark? It's not a line, something chipped away. It's not a hole. So let's just fill this in as, the changing surface of the stone. Same over here, right? This is just, there's not an inscribed area. It's just kind of the changing. Same up here, right? You can say, you could try to claim that these are letters, but it's just the rough surface of this stone, right? You can, this stuff up here is what I'm talking about. What is all of this, right? This is just the surface. Whoops. This is just the surface of the stone. Am I missing any marks? I'm just trying to look around. I guess you could claim that, let's bring this back to 100. I guess you could claim that there's a scratch here and there's a scratch here. I think you could claim fairly, again, I'm trying to be as fair as possible, that there's a scratch here that may or may not continue across here, right? Let's get back to that brown at 50. I've been using Photoshop for 20-something years. So this whole region right here, right? This is all change in the surface, right, of the stone. You can see it here. Same here, right? This is all change in just surface of the stone. It's like this out here, right? All of this. That's not an inscription. Nobody in their right mind would claim that there is anything inscribed out here. You can see that the rock is just broken off, and this is the changing. And this is what I'm talking about. See this here? This, see down in here? This is not an inscribed mark. This is the broken off area of the stone, right? And you can see this ridge right here, right? And this kind of valley right here. That's not an inscribed mark. Okay, see this crack right here, right? These aren't inscribed marks. See the change in the surface area right here? And that's what I'm marking with these browns, right? This area right here. It's just the change in the contour of the rock. Did I miss any lines? I want to be fair, but I don't want to look at Dr. Galil's. Okay, let's just be very generous. Maybe there's a line there. Okay? We can say that there's a tick there. We can say that there's a tick there. All right, let's be very generous and say that there's a cross here. Okay? This looks like contour. So let's put that back here and put this at 50%. And again, thank you for bearing with me on this exercise, but this is all contour. And again, I'm guessing having to do with the creation of the pockmark just to the south of it. And again, this is all contour right in here. Are there any other lines that I missed? Again, up here, this is just changing the shape, the face of the stone. You can see it here, right? This is just changing face of the stone. Any other scratches? Any other? Let's be incredibly generous. Again, I always benefit of the doubt to the guy making the sensational claim. Again, as a scientist, as a scholar, I begin with the question is, how is my theory wrong? How am I wrong? What's wrong with my theory? How am I incorrect? The scientific method always works on a theory of negation, right? Here's my theory. Prove it wrong. What's wrong with this? Let's knock it down. Not the other way around. You don't prove things in science. You only disprove things. This, by the way, over here, all looks like contour. Do you see that? I mean, you could claim that that's a line and claim that that's a line, but this over here looks a heck of a lot like this over here. Would you not agree? I mean, it's just broken away, chiseled away piece of rock. All right, so that's what we've got. Let's leave it there for now. So let's save this as file, save as, Stone Jerusalem photo, RRC, Robert Raymond Cargill, lines. And that'll be our lines. And then I'm going to save this file. I'm going to export it out as a quick PNG. All right. So there's our inscription. Now, what I'm going to do is now double the width of the canvas so we can do a side-by-side. So the canvas size, right, was 1,500. So now I'm going to make it to the right, 3,000. Now let's do mine to the left. Let's bring it over here. So we'll make this 3,000. Okay, will give us a lot of extra room. And then what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll open Dr. Galil's. Now we'll finally take a look at Dr. Galil's drawing. So here's his drawing. And what we'll do is we'll drag this onto our drawing. Boom. And then we will bring it over here. We will size it up a little bit. So we will edit, free transform. And all we're doing now is bringing it down to about the size that we are here. Okay? So we just want to make sure that we have it about the same height. Then what we'll do is crop it down so that we get rid of all the excess space that we left for ourselves. There we go. Image crop. And that will bring us back to here. Now, as we look at these two drawings, we notice some things, to say the least. One is that, oh boy, that I don't even know where to begin. All right, as we begin to look at this, we notice some things. And I'll make occasional drawings like this so that you can see them. Maybe I will do it with a different color so it doesn't mess up with the, like, we'll do it in lime green. How's that? Lime green. We want to bring this, something obnoxious. Let's do that there. That way, when I point at something, you can see it. All right, here we go. Okay, first of all, I'm going to save this. So File, Save As. Stone Photo Jerusalem. Let's just call this Side by Side. All right, first thing you notice is, while I did represent certain things, and like Dr. Galil did, like, this tav here. I'm assuming he's calling it a tav. And here, this one as well, you can see it, right? I drew this one, and he drew this one. He clearly did not represent any of these lines that are clear, right? The scratches in this region. Okay? And instead, what he sees are what? A bunch of, these have to be raches. I think he's calling them raches. R's, Hebrew raches. He sees one here. He sees one here. He sees one here. And again, I'd have to come down here and look and see, where is he seeing this? I see this line and this line over here. But okay, so maybe he's calling this line part of this, but I don't see this connecting line, right? And I certainly don't see this line down here, right? And he sees two of these things. So he sees another one, what? He sees another one down here, like this, right? He says it's above this. He says it's just to the left of this dot. So he has to be seeing something like that over here. But again, this is the chisel marks carving this thing out. I don't see this mark here to create this resh. And again, you and I watched all the lines. So I see this tav, fair enough. I see this tav, fair enough. He sees these two tavs. But he also sees another one here. Okay, maybe he's calling this a tav. But if we go back, I don't know. And just for the record, here's something else we can do for fun, is we can image canvas size. We can bring down the canvas size. The height is 936. So let's make it 18. Let's make it 1900 pixels. Well, that's the width. Sorry. Let's add another 936. Down here. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the stone photograph. Again, open. And we will grab this here. Please open it. There we go. And then what we're going to do is drag it, and I'll show you why we're doing this. I'll drag it over here to the side by side, and I'll put it right under here. And the reason I'm doing this is so that we can now go back and check the original photo, right? So Dr. Galil sees a tav here, which I saw here, right? Across, and he sees here. But he also sees one here, and he clearly extends this. He says that there's a line coming this way, and that there's a line here and continuing all the way down here. Now, I saw this line here, and I saw this one continuing down to it. But if you look down here, right? Look down here on this one, that line doesn't continue, right? You can say this, you can say that this line, did it again, comes down here, and you can say that there's a little spur there. You can say that. I think it continues on up here, but oh well, right? I mean, you can see this. It's here, and then it curves down, and it comes down, right? So it's all the way down here like that. You can see something here, but there is nothing coming out of this side in here. There's just nothing there. Right? But he sees a tav. And now we're getting into, well, this is what we want him to see. And I don't know what he sees here. Right? He sees some kind of a mem or a shin. Is he calling these mems or shins? He's got to be calling them mems. What's he doing here? So here's the tav, right? You can see this tav. We marked that. We indicated that. Whoops. We indicated that one here. But we got these three lines, right? 1, 2, 3, clearly visible. 1, 2, 3. But there is no line. But you can clearly see there's no line right here coming down, right? There's no, that doesn't continue on right here. It's not there, right? Oh, okay. So I don't know what he's saying. This is a line. Again, he sees a tav here, great. And then he sees what? This line going up to here, and then down, and then this, and then into the pock. He sees that. I mean, I guess you could say that there's something there, but over here we're in the chisel part of the wall. right? And we marked the actual chisel mark. You can see that. There's something back in here, a depression. And this here, this is part of the approach for this pockmark. So again, this looks like chicken scratch. Maybe there's a letter or two, but to start supplying, and we're just in the corner here, right? Now these races, who knows what he's doing here, right? And then I don't know what he's thinking about with, is he saying this is an aleph of some sort? Where is he saying this? He's saying it's to the left of these two. It's to the right of this. It's about halfway between, he's saying, this and this. Now you look at this photo here, bottom right, and you tell me where he sees that. Is he saying that just the contour of this stone here, right? That's, by the way, you can clearly see scratches in. We marked these scratches. You can clearly see incisions in this, right? We marked them, whatever this is in here, right? But we can clearly see marks made on top of this. But he's not counting those. Why? It doesn't help his cause. But he's calling all of that a letter. He's calling that this letter. And he's saying that beneath that, there are two more letters. He's saying that there's a letter down here. And what? Good Lord. That there's a... Oh my gosh. What is this, a mem? What's he saying? A mem or a shin? Is he calling these mems or shins? He's got to be calling them mems. He's saying that there's another tav down here, right? He's saying that there's, and again, we mark these, right? We mark these as depressions in the stone. These aren't inscribed marks. You can see it. They're depressions in the stone. There's a difference between an incision in the stone and then just a depression in the stone, like out here and in here, right? There is no difference between this and this. It's just contours in the face of the stone. But Dr. Galil is seeing them as letters, right? Who knows what he's doing down here? So the question becomes, what else is he seeing here, right? He sees, we clearly marked these down here, right? We marked this and this, right? We marked that. You can see it here. We marked it. We marked this. Okay, maybe you could say that this continues up, right? Maybe you could say that this scratch continues up. But where is it up here? Right? It's clearly here, right? You can see those marks, right? And then this large, right? This large tav. So I'm guessing that this is the large tav that he sees, right? We marked it over here. Here's the large tav, right? You can see it. Here it is down here. Large tav. But there was this other mark here next to it. A clear vertical mark, right? You can see this clear vertical mark going up next to it. Let's get rid of these lines. Right? You can see that there's, what is he saying? This is a mem. So you can see that there's a line here, right? You can see the line. There's something here. Now, does that go all the way across? Does it break? Was it interrupted? Whatever. And you can see a line here, right? We marked both of those. Now, does that go all the way to the top? But there's something here. You can clearly see it. See it? You can clearly see this vertical line. And you can clearly see whatever this verticalness is, which we marked up here, right? You can see this vertical line, which we marked. You can see this piece and this piece. I'm doing it again, right? Whatever this is, there's this line coming across here, right? There's this thing, whoops. There's this thing coming across here to the north, right? There's this little depression that we didn't mark, right? This one right here. There's some kind of depression. But we marked all these things up here. We marked them. Professor Galil sees a tav, and then working towards the southwest, he sees, I'm going to take all these out of here. He sees, I'm going to draw it the way he draws it. He sees one, I'm guessing two, even though this line clearly continues over here, he's seeing it as coming down here. So he sees that. And then I guess he's seeing this as a 1, 2, and then he sees a line here that then goes out. I mean, and then what? What I'm trying to see is, where is he seeing this tav? Unless this is the tav. This is the tav that he's seeing. And then what? This is he saying it comes just above? How is this even possible? What is he doing? Do you see the problem here? I'm trying to replicate this area here, down here in the rock. Here's what we got from looking. We got this from looking at this. And he got this. So how did he get that? What's he looking at? Here is this. Here's this POC region here, right? And he's saying, by the way, that there's a resh right below it. Do you see this? He says that there's a resh below it. I guess he's saying this depression here is a resh. No, but again, he's saying, we marked it as just a depression in the rock because that's what it is. But he sees that as a resh. He sees it as two reshes, right? We mark this as part. Oh, I see what he's doing. This part of, we marked it as depression in the rock up here, but he's seeing this right directly beneath this. He's seeing this as he's seeing it as directly beneath this. So he's saying that this is a resh, which is just imaginary, right? Do you see a resh there with a stem, right? There's a stem here. He's saying that this is a resh. Then he's saying that immediately right down right here, there's another one. He's saying what? That? Then he's saying this is the tav. We mark that one, right? He's saying this is the tav, which means, again, there's not that much room, right? If this is that lengthy pockmark here, right? And again, I don't see these two keyholes, right? These two reshes. But if he's giving resh, tav, which is what he did here, resh, tav, dang it, tav, then he's saying that there are two more letters to the west of it. Now, I want to know, where are you seeing that? I see a tav here. Whoops. I can see a cross there maybe. Not really, but okay. There. But where are you seeing this thing? This is what I mean when I say it's a Rorschach test. He is seeing letters that are clearly not there. We marked all the scratches up here and the depressions in the brown. There's just not enough room to put in these letters. Then he's saying that above the tav, and again, we'll mark the tav here again. He's saying that this is a tav. And to the left of that, he's saying that this is a resh. Again, I would say that this here is just rock face, right? It's no different than this here. There's no scratch. We marked all the deep scratches. You can see down here, deep scratch, deep scratch, deep. Now they look to be very vertical chisel marks, but okay, let's call them deliberate incisions, right? He's saying that these are rashes, and then he's saying, what, due west on the other side of the tav, that there's some kind of, show me where that is here. He's saying that this is boom, boom. I can see where he can get that, right? We mark those here, right? We mark these lines here and here. I can see that, right? If you want to call it a long noon or a final noon or a vav or a yod, or, in modern, right? But it's a long scratch and a short scratch. But what I do not see is this part up here. So I'll give you this and I'll give you this, but that's a line. That's a line. Right? This is a line. There, call it what you want. You can say that that's a line. But how you get, again, how you get this from this is, well, I know how you do it. You have to really, really want it. You have to say, I really, really need this stone to match the supposed inscription we found at this other place. I mean, it's a Rorschach test. I don't know how else to say it. It's a Rorschach test. You're looking at chicken scratch. And you're saying, what do you see? And you're saying, I see this. What on earth is going on here? Right? Do you see this? I see, okay, so this is anchored to this. And then he sees this, depression going across vertically here. Okay, we marked that too. So he's going to call that depression this. Fine. And then so directly north of this, he's going to see this depression. Okay. And then what? He's going to say, again, it can't be this, right? Because that's too close to this, right? This is clearly more distance than this. So if that's, oh my gosh, I think he wants to do that and then give it little arms. This is fun. It's just the contour of the rock. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. You could, I mean, if you were very generous, you could say there's a line there, right? This is a continuation of this depression, the chisel of the rock. But okay, you could say there's something there, right? Directly above the hole. That would be this line, right? You could say that, I mean, come on, now we're just goofing around. This is the contour of the rock. You can see that, this right here, these are not inscribed areas. You see this contour change over here. You see this ridge right here, this flake here. Those are not inscribed areas. Those are just changes in the face, in the surface of the rock. That's what this is. That's what this is. It's a crack, right? But he is interpreting this as a freaking letter. You could say that that's a scratch. You could say that that's a scratch, right? But to say, what is this? Touching there's a letter here? Really? I think this is all contour of the rock. But he's saying that not only is this a letter, it's an olive. Right? That this close here must be and then there's another one up here. I mean, this is just where we get silly, right? This is silly. All of these little chisel marks in here, right? This region, he's saying as a big olive, and I'm guessing what an ein. Who knows what the heck this is? Oh, goodness gracious. So, I mean, we'll leave it at that, but you can see the problem. So now we'll leave it at that for now. I'm going to save all my work here. Save as. Stone photo Jerusalem. Let's just call it this. Balagan. There we go. Okay. So that's the comparison, let's say. And you can see, and I've got it on my screen here, and I'll try to cut it back in and out here in the video. But I think it is safe to say that what Professor Galil is supplying does not accurately represent what the stone says, if it says anything at all. Again, it is very possible that there are some letters inscribed, some marks inscribed. That is absolutely possible, right? We noted, and we were very generous about it, we noted a lot of inscribed marks. I think clearly that this was chiseled in a downward fashion, right? Most of these marks are vertical. There are some that are coming down on an angle. But I thought we were very generous with our interpretation. And again, a lot of our lines matched up with what Professor Galil noted, right? The pock marks, we used those kind of to align, to orient ourselves within the inscription. The approaches to those, so when something was pierced on an angle, he represented some of those. A lot of these inscribed marks you can see on his drawing and on what we were able to create. But then there are these other things that he is just seeing, I think, because he wants to see them. Let me put it another way. Would Professor Galil have come up with this interpretation that he did if he didn't already have the supposed Mount Ebal inscription in his head? Arur, right? Curse, curse, you will surely die. If he didn't already have that in his head, if he wasn't already cognitively primed to believe that, to want to see that, right? This is how a Rorschach test works, right? You put up the ink blot, and whatever you're already primed to want to see is what you're most predisposed to see in there. So you might see butterfly. You might see flower in a different picture, right? You might look at another one and you might see two people, right? But if you're predisposed, right, if your entire career and reputation and your funding, right, your belief, your theology, your identity, if all of that is riding on this interpretation, this of being cursed, 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 you will surely die, cursed are you by, if it's all riding on that, you're going to look at these same ink blots and say, cursed, cursed are you, you will surely die. Next picture. Cursed, cursed are you, you will surely die, right? You're going to want to see things that just aren't there. Which is probably why they went to the press first and put this out there, because they need another piece of so-called evidence to attempt, to try to substantiate their earlier outrageous claim of this Mount Ebal thing. Right? So now you got two of the, oh, look, they match, right? Now look, I do a lot of television for History Channel, right? I've been on Ancient Aliens. I've been the debunker on Ancient Aliens, right? I've been on that show. And if you haven't ever seen this show, the format is basically traditional scholars and skeptics say no. And then they cut to me and I'm like, yeah, no, right? This was all created by, whatever. And then they say, but ancient aliens enthusiast, and then they go on and they do some theory, right? So I'm the voice of reason. I'm the voice saying, yeah, no, this is, or I'm setting up the, right? And this is how I can reach so many people and say, actually, legitimate archaeology, legitimate science says this. And if you're interested in that, give me a call. And then they go off on this crazy alien stuff. Now, I do a lot of this stuff with history. I know a little bit about how conspiracy theories work, right? And how people want to believe. That's how this works. And when your audience is fundamentalist Christians and Jews, right? Who find it's not just a belief, it's their identity, right? Everything that they've been screaming at people for their entire life is that the Bible has no contradictions, that it's the literal word of God, that it's inerrant, that it's infallible. Everything that it says has to be true, and archaeology proves it, despite the fact that archaeology disproves so much of what the Bible claims, right? Now, a lot of you watching this video would say, that's not true. That's the point, right? Fundamentally, science disproves a lot of the stuff that's in the Bible. But for some people, that is just blah, 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 blah. We can't hear that, right? So where's the evidence? They don't have the evidence, right? The evidence isn't there. So they need a piece of evidence that kind of supports the claim for, in this case, for Dr. Stripling, that there really was a conquest, that they all marched up to Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, and they held this ceremony. And so you can see how this little piece of lead means so much to that movement, to this fundamentalist Christian movement that says, no, they really did conquer the land. Because all the archaeological evidence today is saying, no, they didn't conquer the land the way the Bible says it. That's just that we dismissed that theory over the past 30, 40 years. He didn't like that. The Bible was written by a number of sources that were brought together. He didn't like that either. The Bible was written at earliest, maybe a couple of poems and lines, maybe from the 10th century, but probably at earliest 8th, 7th century, but the bulk of it at or in the exile, with a couple of the books like Esther and Daniel coming during the Hellenistic period. That's the predominant theory, right? And some people want to moose that back a little bit, but that they can't have that, right? Fundamentalist, Moses had to write it, right? It has to be way back. And so that's why this, if you haven't figured this out yet, that's why this little Mount Ebal inscription is so important, right? Because it, as I said in the last video, it kills two theological birds with one stone, right? It proves that this is Joshua's altar, right? Because look, it's talking about a curse, and this is the place where the curse happened, so the conquest must have happened. And look, they're capable of writing Hebrew, right? It's generic Semitic words, but they can write Hebrew. And look, since they can write Hebrew, as Professor Galil claimed, then they can write every word in the Bible, which no, but okay. And, this is a legal document or a theological document. No. But that's why they want this thing to be so real. They haven't published it. They went straight to the press. They knew it would be big news. They knew it would help them raise funds. They knew it would get a lot of attention. And they knew, because of the nature of most scholars, not doing what I do and, dealing directly to the public, directly with the media, they knew that most scholars would just ignore it. It's just another nonsensical claim. It's a outrageous claim made by a guy claiming. The problem is the press picks this up and then repeats it. And then when we get back in the classroom, we got to deal with it. Students will say, "Hey, did you see that there was an inscription?" And then every one of us, scholars, have to say, "Actually, no, that's not how it happened." And then we got to spend all this time explaining what real archaeology looks like and what apologetics looks like, right? And this is just fundamentalist Christian apologetics posing as archaeology. There is a reason that the IAA doesn't recognize Joshua's altar. There is a reason that Scott Stripling is digging that site without a license from the IAA, right? By the way, there are sites in the West Bank that the IAA recognizes, right? Qumran, the Herodian. They could do that if they wanted, but they don't, right? This is the heart of the West Bank. This is essentially a political enterprise. They desperately want this to be Joshua's altar so that they can make a claim for the state of Israel to the heart of the West Bank, right? To Nablus. So there is a political, there is a nationalist, right? Look at Aaron Lipkin's, look at any of his posts on Facebook, look at any of his website. He's a tour guide. He owns a travel company that specializes in what he calls Manasseh and Ephraim, right? Samaria, the Samaria region, right? He lives up in this area, right? He never calls this the West Bank, right? This is the heartland of ancient Israel. This is a political enterprise. It's also a theological enterprise for Dr. Stripling. So there is a political and a nationalistic and a theological motivation driving all of this. Just know that. That's what I was hinting at last time, and now I think it's pretty explicit. And if you look at what Professor Galil is doing with this inscription, you can see this. The letters that he's suggesting aren't there. And I think you would be hard-pressed to find any legitimate scholar, any credible archaeologist, to look at that stone and to say, yes, Professor Galil has accurately represented what is on that stone, if there's any inscription there at all. It's just not there, right? Trust me, if there had been an inscription on this stone, Professor Shukron would have announced it, right? Would have said something to it. But what we're seeing now with Professor Galil's multiple posts on Facebook is he's claiming to discover all of these texts, right? He's claiming to discover these things that he's discovered, that he's uncovered, that he's interpreted, and that, look, they all happen to coincide with what they've discovered at Mount Ebal. So what I'm suggesting is what Professor Galil is presenting to the public, again, without going through peer review, is simply not what's present on this stone. And there is a reason, and I want to get this quote right, there is a reason that the IAA said when asked about what they thought about this, the quote was, and this is the article by Michael Horowitz in Times of Israel. Galil's assertions are called cautiously interesting by the IAA, right? And the quote is, "The Israel Antiquities Authority believes that the conclusions should be based on scientific research and publication, as is customary in academia," the IAA statement cautioned, which is academic language for publish this thing in a peer-reviewed journal and then we'll talk. That's what they're saying. That's a very polite, diplomatic way of saying, yeah, no. Get other people, get other scholars to agree with you, and we'll chat. But as you and I just saw here, when you look at these two images side by side, I mean, look at it. What you see in Dr. Galil's drawing is simply not there. I don't want to say making up because it sounds like I'm being mean, but he is supplying lines. He is supplying things that simply are not present in the stone. Why? Because he wants them to be there. Why? Because he wants it to match something very similar to the Mount of All inscription. Why? Because he wants to support his interpretation of the Mount of All inscription when we actually finally get to see it. Why? Because when we actually see the Mount of All inscription, we're going to say, yeah, no, that's no. What are you even looking at here? It's degrading. It's changing contours. You're seeing all these letters. And so what he wants to prime the brain by introducing shapes of letters and things in something else, right? So that by the time we look at that, we've at least seen it, and his followers, right? His supporters have seen it. And so then there'll be this army of people on Twitter and on Facebook that will say, oh no, this looks identical. See, these two match, right? It's a circular argument. The Jerusalem stone says it, and look, the Mount of All says it, so they corroborate each other, right? They confirm one another. But they're both completely supplied by Dr. Galil. And find me the credible archaeologist who isn't working for Associates for Biblical Research or isn't working with the Stripling, any of his. Find one of these that is saying something beyond, why don't we wait and see what the peer-reviewed journal says? I mean, that's a nice diplomatic answer. But find me someone who's saying, oh yeah, that's clearly what this is. I believe this. This is again, there might be an inscription on that little lead tablet. And there may have been an inscription here. But it looks like something was chiseled. Maybe they were preparing it. Maybe they were. That's all possible. But that doesn't mean that what Professor Galil is supplying us is what that stone says. It's you did it with me here. It's just not there. All right. What do you think? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Let me know what you think. Ring the bell, by the way, if you want to be notified of videos as they come out. But until next time, I'm Dr. Bob Cargill, the excavator, wishing you everything the best.